We turn now to the Democratic presidential race. 12 candidates faced off in a sometimes heated debate last night in Westerville, Ohio. Yamiche Alcindor was there and is back now with this report.
I want to give a reality check here to Elizabeth.
The attacks on Elizabeth Warren started early and came from all sides.
You can't say you're for corporate responsibility if it doesn't apply to everyone.
Senator Warren said we can't be running any vague campaigns. We got to level with people.
Sometimes I think that Senator Warren is more focused on being punitive or pitting some part of the country against the other, instead of lifting people up and making sure that this country comes together around those solutions.
I'm really shocked at the notion that anyone thinks I'm punitive.
For months, the Massachusetts senator has been gradually rising in the polls. So when she again declined to go into detail about the cost of her Medicare for All plan.
So let me be clear on this. Costs will go up for the wealthy, they will go up for big corporations, and for middle-class families, they will go down.
Some of the more moderate voices on the stage pounced. They included Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar.
The difference between a plan and a pipe dream is something that you can actually get done.
And South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Your signature, Senator, is to have a plan for everything, except this.
In past debates, Buttigieg mostly stayed away from direct confrontations. But last night, he launched into several sharp back and forths.
What is an endless war if it's not yet another regime change war?
Respectfully, Congresswoman, I think that is dead wrong.
That included exchanges with Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard over U.S. policy in Syria. He also sparred on gun policy with former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
Well, we have time to do what's right.
I don't need lessons from you on courage, political or personal. Everyone on this stage is determined to get something done.
The candidates did agree on one critical issue.
I support impeachment.
Their support for the impeachment inquiry facing President Trump.
He has committed crimes in plain sight.
He should be removed.
Last night also marked billionaire Tom Steyer's first time on the debate stage. He has been pushing to impeach President Trump for the past 2 years.
Impeaching and removing this president is something that the American people are demanding.
Tremendous corruption with Biden.
Also a big topic, President Trump accusing former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter of corrupt business dealings in Ukraine. Those unproven claims helped spark the impeachment inquiry.
My son did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong.
Biden defended his family and went on the offensive.
The president and his thugs have already proven that they, in fact, are flat lying. What we have to do now is focus on Donald Trump.
Biden also criticized the president's decision to withdraw U.S. forces from northern Syria. That decision allowed Turkey to launch an attack against the Kurds who helped the U.S. fight ISIS.
We have an erratic, crazy president who knows not a damn thing about foreign policy and operates out of fear for his own reelection.
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker joined in.
So first of all, understand that this president is turning the moral leadership of this country into a dumpster fire.
It was also the first debate since Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders suffered a heart attack 2 weeks ago.
We are going to be mounting a vigorous campaign all over this country.
Sanders announced a rally in New York this coming weekend.
We're going to have a special guest at that event.
That special guest is New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is a member of the so-called squad of 4 liberal congresswomen. She and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan are expected to join Ilhan Omar of Minnesota in endorsing Sanders. An aide to the senator told NewsHour Sanders hopes to also get the endorsement of the last member of the squad, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Yamiche Alcindor.
So, will last night's debate change the presidential race? For some post-game analysis, I'm here with 2 NewsHour regulars. It's Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report and host of Public Radio's Politics with Amy Walter, and Stu Rothenberg, senior editor for Inside Elections. And welcome to you both. 3 hours of debate last night. If there was one candidate, Amy, that everyone else had their sights trained on, it was Senator Elizabeth Warren. How did that go for her?
Well, she was the target, I think, of every single person on that stage. We saw the clips about Medicare for All, which was a big component of the attacks on how her plan would get paid for, which is her plan is actually Bernie Sanders' plan. But she was also attacked for sort of her my way or the highway approach, that her plan to break up big tech was criticized by Andrew Yang. So it was pretty clear that she is seen now as if not the front runner, at least a co-front runner with Joe Biden. But I think she handled it pretty well. There wasn't a moment in which you thought, boy, that was a pretty terrible answer, or she looks really rattled. There's no doubt that her opponents and press coverage is going to continue to focus on her answer on how to pay for this Medicare for All plan. That's not going away. How she responds to it over time, I think, may change. So that was probably her least impressive moment, but overall, I thought it was pretty good.
Stu, what'd you make of that? That Medicare for All moment, that she took a lot of heat for that,
Yes.
not really answering the question.
Yes, she did. She ducked the question, and it was asked of her 2 or 3 times, and she kept ducking. I kind of felt like she fell off the horse, but she got back on it pretty quickly. Unlike Kamala Harris, if you remember in the second debate, when Harris was attacked very early in the debate, she kind of disappeared for the rest of the debate. Not in this case with Elizabeth Warren. She was as feisty as ever, as aggressive as ever defending herself.
Yeah.
That whole fight over Medicare for All and some of the differences that were obvious in that conversation last night, you've talked about this before, some of the fundamental choices that are within the Democratic Party right now. Were any of those reconciled last night?
No, but I kind of feel like we're coming to the head here, a critical point, an inflection point maybe, whereby Democrats are going to have to choose. Do they want a populist progressive like Sanders or more likely Warren, or do they want somebody who's progressive but is pragmatic? It's not my way or the highway. And this is a decision I think we've been waiting for months already. And it kind of felt like last night, like we're getting to the point where Democrats are going to start making those choices. And other choices, too. Do they want an older candidate or a younger candidate? Do they want somebody with DC experience or more of an outsider? These are the critical choices we've been waiting for them to make. I think they're on the cusp of starting to make those choices.
Now that we're getting closer and closer to the fall, right? Or we're in the fall. Closer and closer
We're in
to
it,
the
Amy.
end of the fall. I know I'm not admitting it yet, but yes, now that we're getting closer and closer to when people actually start voting. And I think Stu's right. There's always been these two lanes right now, this sort of pragmatic in the form of Joe Biden, which is the return to normalcy, right? Let's just kind of go back to where we were with Obama, get rid of Trump. That's our first priority versus the big structural change of Warren and Sanders. But what Pete Buttigieg did yesterday was, and he's been building this case for a while, is he said, well, there's actually a third way. You don't have to buy into just this or just that. You can pick me. I am going to be more, because I'm younger and I'm more of a visionary, I'm not a Washington insider, I'm going to be different from Joe Biden. I'm not all about returning to normalcy. I don't think there's such a thing as a pre-Trump normalcy. At the same time, I don't have an interest in getting into these protracted all-or-nothing fights on policy, whether it's on guns or Medicare for All, or on immigration that some of the other people on this stage want. And so really setting up a way for voters who may not feel like they're comfortable in either one of those lanes to have a place to go.
You mentioned you were going to watch Pete Buttigieg in that debate. And since the debate, his campaign actually announced he's raised $1 million since that performance. You've also been following the money, which is an interesting place to look. The FEC deadline for those third quarter fundraising numbers was yesterday. Do we know anything about what that shows?
Well, I do think that more than this debate performance, the money is going to be really the story going forward. And the fact that Pete Buttigieg did have a breakout night, but he also raised a lot of money in that third quarter, and he's sitting on $23 million. Joe Biden, the front runner, at least in the polling, has only $9 million in the bank. That is not a very good place to be as we're headed to where we're getting to big spending time, getting into December especially.
I mean, isn't that also, though, a problem for Elizabeth Warren in that Bernie Sanders has a boatload of cash sitting on? He's not the kind of person to just go away.
That's a good point.
As long as he has the money, as long as he gets some endorsements that he thinks are useful to him, whether I think they're quite as, like AOC, I'm not quite so sure that's as useful as he thinks, but as long as he thinks they're useful, isn't he likely to stay in the race, and isn't that a problem for Warren? Because they're not competing for identical groups of voters, but similar sorts of supporters.
That's right.
There is some overlap there. There's also, you saw from the outside, some of those lower polling candidates. We always say these debates are a great opportunity for them to try to punch up, try to break through. Stu, did you notice anyone else? Amy mentioned Pete Buttigieg kind of really standing out to her. Did you notice anyone else?
I thought,
breaking
obviously,
away?
Amy Klobuchar did. I thought she did a good job. She was very aggressive. Again, went after Warren, and really positioned herself as someone who is realistic, pragmatic, and can work with Republicans, or at least put forward policy proposals that are reasonable, and she's willing to compromise. Having said that, I don't know if there's any way for her to go as long as Joe Biden is in the race. Nobody else stood out to me. I don't know if I would say that's a missed opportunity. I keep waiting for Kamala Harris to bust out again, but she didn't, and Booker was fine. But it's just hard to stand out when you have a crowd and when you have the focus on 3 or 4 people at the top of the list.
That's right. And they all seem to, though, be positioning themselves, even Buttigieg, for what happens if one of those 3 frontrunners is no longer in the contest. In other words, that they've
just
slipped.
one of the 3 frontrunners, right?
Well, specifically Joe Biden.
Specifically
if you're
Joe
Pete
Biden.
Buttigieg, and if you're Elizabeth Warren, you're hoping that it's Bernie Sanders is unable to turn that money into actual votes. And there we go.
Well, over the course of the night, really quickly, too, I want to mention President Trump's name was introduced again and again and again into the conversation. One of the main questions for Democratic primary voters out there is who can beat Donald Trump one day? Did anyone, you think, set themselves up as the man or the woman who can stand up to President Trump?
Listen, Joe Biden on polls still leads on that question. It's been dropping in the percent of Democrats who believe he can beat Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren is the one who really has to break through that ceiling of electability. And I think the fact that she was the target last night should stand her well in making the case that I know what it's like to take incoming, and I know how to be able to deflect that and also punch back. And as Stu said, to stick with my message, I'm not going to get distracted by all the different attacks that I'm going to get in a campaign.
Stu, just 30
I
seconds.
guess I don't think that the electability argument will be decided until early 2020 after the Iowa caucuses. Let's see who does well. Let's see who improves or fails over the next couple of months. Electability will be important, but we really don't know what it's going to look like in the late winter or early spring.
Still a long way to go, and
Yes.
another debate just a month away.
Yay!
Amy Walter and Stu Rothenberg.
I can't take another one.
Thanks to you both.
Thanks.